Earlier this week, I decided to have a discussion about the power play, and you guys really enjoyed it. And in the comments, there was a bigger discussion about the penalty kill and how it needs to be better. So, let's discuss it. Hey gang, Kosta here from Puck Talk Montreal, and you guys are right. And I've always said, if you put it in the comments, I'll look it over, I'll read them, and I'll justify it by having an episode about it. And I got to tell you, a lot of what you guys said about the power play and some of the units you'd put together and where you expect them to be were outstanding. I had a great time reading them. I enjoyed them, and a lot of them made a lot of sense. So kudos to everybody who did put it in the comments. And of course, now we'll talk penalty kill because after all, defensively is where a lot of you think Montreal has issues. And I agree. Defensively, especially at 5-on-5, they're not great. Man-to-man, I'm not a fan of it. It's what Marty St. Louis wants them to play. And as the skill level gets better, the 5-on-5 play will get better and the man-to-man coverage in our own zone will get better. But let's talk penalty kill. So what makes up a good penalty kill? Well, there's a lot of factors that go into it because you can't just put anybody on a penalty kill unit and think it's going to be successful. As much as hockey IQ is an important part of the power play, it's just as important, if not more important, on the penalty kill. You need to have that power play understanding to be able to kill off penalties. You need to understand how other teams structure their power plays, where they like to feed the puck the most often, where they score most of their goals. The list goes on. And who, of course, are the most productive players on every team's power play. It's a huge part of it. So the guys that are on the power play need to be smart. They need to be active. They need to be smart. They need to be savvy. And they need to be agile. Now, oftentimes in previous seasons, we didn't really see that many guys that were agile. Last year, David Savard spent a lot of time on the penalty kill, and David Savard was about as agile as a construction cone in Montreal. But, he was able to block shots. But the problem with David Savard's penalty killing method was the same as I found back when Hal Gill was killing penalties for Montreal, is they would commit themselves to blocking the shots, but then they would take themselves out of being able to actually defend in the zone. They wouldn't chase the puck to corners. They wouldn't cover the zone as well. So they would give opportunities to the opposition to move the puck. That's kind of where I think Marty St. Louis wants to change that a little bit. And he wants to have guys that are much more agile and have the ability to move and go to players and pressure them. I said the word pressure, right? Puck pressure is a key to penalty killing, at least effectively anyway. You can't sit back and be in, whether it's a box or a diamond, and wait for the other team to make a play. They're just like when you defend a player coming in on you. What you have to do is reduce the gap between you and the other player, get them within a stick length, and then when the opportunity arises, pounce. So if a player hesitates with the puck, if a player looks down at the puck, looks away from you, has trouble stick handling, those are the times when a penalty killer needs to pounce on the puck. So there has to be a certain amount of pressure. Where does that pressure start? It starts in the other team's defensive zone when they start to break out of the zone and come into your zone. Now, granted, they start in your own zone with the puck, so it's important to be able to have somebody to win the faceoffs, clear the puck down the ice. But it's also important, not only when you clear the pucks down the ice, to get somebody down there quickly on the forecheck on the puck carrier. And here's the idea. Your forecheck can't be one player, okay? It's got to be two. And the way I look at it is like this. The Montreal Canadiens, when they had a very good penalty kill, always had one guy in pressuring the puck and another guy in support. If the puck was moved, the secondary guy went over to apply pressure, and the original forechecker would come back in support. And they would alternate so that there was always pressure on the puck, whether it was left, right, front, defensive zone, neutral zone, whatever the case was. Those two forwards would be constantly on the puck. The minute the puck crossed the blue line, never mind the forecheck, now you were getting into a defensive posture. But it's important to take as much time away from the opposing team as possible. And that starts with your forecheck in the defensive zone of your opposition. Once that forecheck is passed, then you got to make sure you get back into that defensive posture. And then as the need arises, apply pressure on the puck. You know, when we talk about guys that are really effective on the power play with one-timers, you look at guys like Ovechkin, Steven Stamkos, Patrick Laine, and how do people mitigate their ability to be effective on the power play? They've shadowed them. They put somebody on them within a stick length, make them uncomfortable. You've seen it, right? It's not like I'm telling you something you haven't seen before. But then if somebody like a Laine or a Ovechkin mishandles the puck, you pounce. You get on him, you get your stick in theirs, you get as close to them as you can, you push them off the puck, and you clear the puck down the ice. One of the things that's really important in doing that is, number one, hammering the puck down the ice doesn't solve anything. When you're clearing your zone, you need to clear it and make sure the puck gets out, but you need to do it in a way where you send the puck down the ice soft enough so that you can get changes in when you need to, and second, so that you can get engaged on the forecheck. If you hammer the puck down the ice and the goalie gets to play the puck in the trapezoid behind the net, then as you come in and he sees you coming on the forecheck, he can play it to the opposite side. Your forecheck becomes null and void. If you put it softly into the zone and you forecheck, you mitigate the ability of the goalie to come out and play the puck, and then you can get in on a more effective forecheck. It all starts there. Then, of course, that forecheck changes to puck pressure in the defensive zone. So as the puck moves either to the point or to a wing, you effectively pressure the puck when you can, if and when there are mistakes made in possession of the puck by the opposition. Here's the thing, too, when it comes to puck pressure. Never chase below the goal line when you're killing a penalty. If there's somebody sitting behind the goal line or behind the net, let them sit there. They're taking themselves out of the play. You've got four guys in front of the net. Sure, you want to watch where they're going with the puck. Sure, you want to make sure you cover any type of option they may have. But you don't want to chase the puck in behind the net. Because if you do, then you're creating an odd man situation in front of the net. So that's where the Canadiens need to get away from that and really be, I wouldn't say overly aggressive when the puck's down low, but be aggressive when it's on the half wall or at the point. So who do I think the Canadiens should put on the penalty kill? Well, let's start with who they shouldn't put. I don't want to see Nick Suzuki on the penalty kill anymore. Last year, there was a need for him to be there because there were only so many face-offs that Jake Evans or Christian Dvorak could take. But now you look at it, Dvorak's gone, and I want to see the Canadiens go in a different direction. So how do you do that? Well, number one, you start with the number one unit. And you could vary these units, guys. This is just me telling you what I think the unit should look like. So the first unit, I have them out there like this. I've got Matheson and Carrier along with Jake Evans and Joe Veleno. Now, why do I have Veleno on there? Well, one, it's righty-lefty on your first unit, right? Two guys that can take faceoffs. Veleno having played center before. Veleno's faceoff percentage is at 46.5%. I kind of foresee that getting better. Why? Because he's going to have more opportunity. Jake Evans, we know he hovers around 50%. He's at about 47, 48. It's not the greatest percentage, but it's not the worst either. So you want to have guys out there that are going to be competitive at the dot. You also want to have guys out there who are quick on the puck, apply puck pressure, and can be smart enough to anticipate plays. You look at the four guys I put there, as I outlined, they have the ability to do that. Jake Evans, of course, has proven time and time again that he can be effective on the penalty kill. But when you look at Veleno, it's not really a job they've given him, but it's a job that he would do if given the opportunity. So that's why I want these two guys there. On the second unit, I've got a little bit different. I've got Alex Newhook and Josh Anderson on the first pairing. Why do I have Anderson there? Anderson as a winger has taken faceoffs before. Newhook is the only other left-handed option we have at center for the time being. If that changes, then this can change. But I always want to have lefty-righty out there, no matter what, because of the fact that you never know who's going to pick what side to take the faceoff on. And defensively, I've got Kaiden Guhle and I've got Noah Dobson. I'm not going to stick Struble out there for that. I'm not going to stick Arber Xhekaj out there. To me, they're not proven enough to give them that responsibility. If somebody like Struble shows me how good he can be defensively, then maybe I'll do it. But for the time being, knowing Dobson's ability to defend and trusting him enough to be able to do it properly, I would put him out there on the second unit. Guhle, we know how good he could be defensively, so there's no argument there. The forwards, I mean, obviously, as I said, Newhook, he's killed penalties before. I don't foresee him being on the power play. So he's killed penalties before. We need to give him a little bit of extra ice time. This would be the way to do it. And he's in that 46, 47% range as far as faceoffs. So he can get to that 50 mark with a little bit of work. Josh Anderson, I don't foresee him taking too many faceoffs, but if the need arises, he can take them as a right-handed shot. And again, even if he doesn't take them and you put another right-handed centerman out there like a Suzuki can take the faceoff, clear the puck, go to the bench. Anderson can hop on, as they did with Dvorak, for example, when the Canadiens were on the power play. They had him out there for faceoffs. He'd win them and go to the bench and swap another player in, like a Slavkovsky, as an example. And you could do the same thing on the penalty kill. So why not? All of these guys have one thing in common. Their hockey IQ is elevated. They're not schlubs. They're not guys that are still learning the game at the NHL level. Guhle has proven that he can be an effective defensive defenseman. Dobson, a lot of giveaways last year, but the season prior, he was among the top 20 defensemen in the National Hockey League. I will trust him to do that job. Mike Matheson, last year he was good defensively. I don't foresee that being a problem. Alexandre Carrier is our stay-at-home defenseman, for lack of a better option. So I see him killing penalties as well. As I said, our forwards, you've got to start Evans out there on the penalty kill. And in my mind, you got to start Veleno. If Veleno's not going to be in the lineup, then that spot would go to a guy like a Zach Bolduc. But again, you've got to have that left-handed face-off option out there, right? That's why I put Veleno there. If Veleno's not in the lineup and Bolduc is there, then, maybe that's the reason why the Canadiens have told Bolduc to work on his face-offs. It's just a theory. But to me, I think the two units that I put out there are the best option. And here's the thing. If you look at the first unit as I have it, right? If we were to say our four lines, right? As an example, I could see Veleno centering Zach Bolduc and whoever else might be on the right-hand side. I could see Veleno possibly being the center between Jake Evans and Brendan Gallagher, while Evans goes up to the third line and functions as the centerman there. There are options, right? And those options can change. But given the state of the team and the roster as it is right now, what we expect to see, that's how I expected. Veleno's going to get a chance to prove himself. Why not give him a chance to prove himself defensively and see what he can bring to the table? If he can play well defensively, not only on the penalty kill, but at 5-on-5, the Canadiens are better for it. Especially if he can bring up his faceoff numbers. Then the need for a second-line center kind of diminishes a little bit. And you could give Veleno a little bit more responsibility and say, you know what? Instead of having Kirby Dach as the second-line center when he's back in the lineup, maybe we could put Veleno there between Laine and, let's say, Demidov. That would be a pretty awesome line given the skill set that Veleno has. You understand what I mean? Those are just all the different options. So if you give him that responsibility and he is the defensive conscience on that line, then why not? The Canadiens, with those 8 players, as they are, right? Dobson, Guhle, Anderson, Newhook, Carrier, Matheson, Evans, Veleno. All guys that can skate well, all guys that are agile on their feet, all guys that are fast enough and good enough with their sticks to not only get sticks in lanes, apply pressure, but the forwards that I outlined can forecheck, and the defensemen can play really well in their own zone. They know how to clear the puck out. None of this flipping the puck out a la David Savard, which I absolutely hated. I know I liked Savard as a defenseman when he first came to Montreal, but last season, given his lack of overall mobility and explosiveness in his skating, he was more of a liability than he was a strength on defense for Montreal. Elder statesman, very valuable as far as teaching the players how to play the right way, but his example is part of the reason why Arber Xhekaj didn't play as well last year. So there's give or take. But overall, what do you think of those penalty killing units? Do you think the Canadiens' penalty kill would be better? Do you want to see them be as aggressive as I talk about, where they don't give players time and space to make decisions? The minute they're close enough to the puck and within a stick length, they pounce. And even if the puck gets moved away to another option, then the pressure is applied to the other option, and the player who missed the assignment, he could get the puck away, could come back in a defensive posture. There's a lot that goes on. There's a lot of moving parts of the penalty kill, just like there is on the power play. And personally, I love the penalty kill because there are two different options. You can play in a conventional box, 2 guys low, 2 guys high, or you can play in a diamond, especially against a 1-3-1 where you have 1 guy up high covering the point, 2 guys on the flanks, and 1 guy at the net front, which is the best way to defend against a 1-3-1, in my opinion. The box, not as effective anymore because there's rarely 2 guys on the point at the same time. The box used to be a hell of a lot more effective when, let's say, in the Canadiens example, there used to be PK Subban and Andrei Markov on the point, right? In a defensive posture, team in the box would bring the strong side defender higher. So if Markov had the puck, then the defender on that side would be a little bit higher. The opposite defender would shade more towards the high slot. If the puck moved to PK, the guy in the high slot would come over to PK. The guy that was covering Markov would back up. So this way there was a variance on the point, kind of like a small V. And then if the puck went down low, they would come to the top of the circles. Puck came back to the point. Again, by a guy on the strong side where the puck is would pressure the point. Guy on the opposite side, on the weak side, would go towards the middle to cover the slot. That's not as effective anymore, right? And it's much easier to rotate a diamond than it is to rotate that box. Because even in the box, you always had 2 guys on the flanks. You never had 1 guy only, right? They called it an overload for a reason because you would put more guys out there. You would have 4 guys in a box up high and 1 guy at the front of the net to wreak havoc on the goalie, right? That's not the case anymore. You still have the guy in front of the net, but now you've got the bumper in the slot, 2 guys in the flanks, 1 guy at the point. Shots coming in from the point, shot coming in from the flank, bumper. There's shots coming in from everywhere. Thank you, Guy Boucher. That wasn't the case with power plays before. It wasn't as offensively oriented as it was, as it is now, because shots could come from any position on the ice at any given time, whether it's down by the goal line, whether it's from the flank, from the point. Back when you had 2 defensemen, it was different because you tried to get a lot of shots from the point. Back in the day when the Canadiens had Vladimir Malahov on the point or Sheldon Surrey, you were looking for the big bomb from the blue line. When was the last time you really saw a big bomb from the blue line? Yes, we're expecting Dobson to provide that for the Canadiens, but name me an NHL team right now that has a guy that can clap a slap shot from the blue line effectively, gets it on goal with pace for guys to be able to generate rebounds. There aren't very many. Most of them come in with wrist shots, and normally the defenseman steps in from the blue line at least a couple of feet to be able to give himself a better shooting angle. Whereas before, it was from the flank to the blue line, one-timer across, bang towards the net, or back and forth, depending on who your defensemen were and their abilities to actually get those shots away. That's changed. Now you've got 1 guy on the point for the most part with most teams. And there's going to come a time where that's going to change. And teams are going to go back to either an umbrella or they're going to go back to an overload power play as opposed to a 1-3-1. I would say 90% of the teams in the National Hockey League use a 1-3-1. There are very few that use an overload right now. But, you adjust to that depending on your opponent. For the most part, though, you play in that diamond, you cover it better. You pressure the puck. The guy in the bumper, you can have one of the guys on the flank shade across to cover him. There's a lot that goes into it. But what is the idea behind penalty killing and power play? It's the same thing. For the most part, you want to be able to defend 2-on-1s. And what you do is the opposing team tries to create automatic situations. So they try to create small area 2-on-1s. You need to create, as a defender, you need to create a situation where it's a 2-on-2 using the goaltender as the other mitigating player on the ice. so that you cover the pass, but you give the shot to the goaltender. Then it's not an on-man situation anymore from the perspective of killing the penalty and being down a man. Then you're at even strength, especially in a small area. Overall, you're not, but in that small area for that particular given point in time, you are. Puck goes back to the point. You apply pressure to the point. You're one-on-one with the guy at the point. Puck goes to the flank. Guy at the point shifts over. Then you've got a 2-on-1 situation. I think you understand where I'm getting at this, right? Power plays try to create on-man situation. Defenders try to mitigate it by using their goaltender to favor them. It's not an exact science, guys. It's not an easy science either. Penalty killing is amongst the most, it can be the most difficult job on the ice for players. Goalie, most difficult position on the ice. Let's call it what it is. Because you are the last line of defense. But penalty kill, those two units are super important. So you get guys out there that are smart. You get guys out there that are good with their sticks, understand power plays, and are quick and agile. And I bet you your penalty kill gets better. And if the penalty kill gets better, the Montreal Canadiens are going to be in much better shape than they were last year. Tell me what you think about the penalty kill and the units that I proposed. Do you foresee somebody else like a Brendan Gallagher still killing penalties at this stage of his career? I don't think it would be an issue. I think it could replace somebody if need be, but I don't think he's quick enough anymore to be able to be effective on the penalty kill. Do you foresee Zach Bolduc possibly being on the penalty kill? Do you think the Canadiens should still use Suzuki? All these questions. I don't think so. I think that the units should be separate. After all, Guy Carbonneau didn't play on the power play, did he, for Montreal? That's the idea. You want to be able to give roles to everybody so there's equal importance on both sides of the puck. But tell me what you think. Put it in the comments. Do you think the penalty kill works? Do you think it doesn't? Do you want the Canadiens to be more aggressive on the puck carrier and apply pressure? Because we saw it last year. They didn't do it often enough. And what happened then? The puck ended up in the back of the net more often than not. Tell me. I'd be more than interested to hear your opinions. Bye for now.